Kareem right here, and today we have Mumbi Kwesele, a professional soccer player at Bay Cities FC. Mumbi, how's it going?
It's going well. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. Can you just pronounce it for the audience? I'm not. I don't think I'm getting it across properly.
Yeah. So the first name is Mumbi, and then
Mumbi.
the last name is Kwesele.
Yeah, very unique name.
Yeah.
So this is our first time connecting online, and thank you for joining us on the hashtag Pro Soccer Talk podcast. Can you just tell the viewers a little bit like about yourself and where you are right now?
Yeah. So currently playing with Bay Cities, like you mentioned, in NISA. This is my fourth year playing professionally. The last two before this one, I was with the Richmond Kickers in USL League One. And then before that, I was in Spain. I was in the Basque Country, playing for a club called Real Union de Irún. And so that's kind of how my professional journey started, was over there.
Nice. Did you always know that you wanted to go pro, or were you just playing, having fun, and then later on in your career?
No, I always knew. I always knew. I just didn't know how I was going to do it specifically, but I always knew that it was a path that I wanted to take. I think especially because my brother went professional, and he's about 8, 9 years older than me. So that path was almost kind of laid before me. He went and played, college soccer, and then jumped into the pro game right after finishing college. And so for me, it was just always there. I always wanted to do it, and obviously following what he did. So.
Nice. That's huge. He set the pathway, and you're able to have at least insight from him of how to go pro and get any information that you wanted from him. So, what level did he get to professionally?
Yeah, so my brother was able to play with the Portland Timbers in the USL before they made the jump to the MLS, about a year or two before, and then he was also playing the NASL with FC Edmonton up in Canada, and so yeah, those were the highest levels that he got to.
Nice. That's really cool because not a lot of. I mean, and you achieved the goal as well of becoming a professional footballer yourself, which is really amazing. But not a lot of players have that insight that you had. So growing up when he was a professional and you weren't at that time, what questions were you asking him to get insight of how to achieve your dreams and goals?
Yeah, it was actually really fascinating because I wasn't at a place where I could really ask him those questions yet. I think obviously I was, maybe 11, 12 years old by the time he was already with the Portland Timbers. So for me, it was just being in that experience with him. So there was, a couple opportunities I had to go and stay with him while he was in Portland. And so I got to be in the team or on the locker room and, go with them to practice, be in and around the locker room on game day and talking to other professional players. There was a professional player, I can never forget this, right? You're 12 and a professional player hands you a pair of his shoes, right? Like those are experiences that you don't forget. But at that time, I wasn't thinking, what do I need to know about this experience and how to get here? It was more so the excitement around being inside the locker room, and especially the Portland Timbers, one of the, at that time, especially one of the biggest clubs in the USL. And knowing and understanding the history of the rivalry with the Sounders, which, I'm from Seattle. So being in and around the locker room with those guys was awesome, seeing the intensity of how they trained. But at that time, I wasn't asking those questions. I was just like, wow, this is really, really cool. So I started asking the questions, I think, a few years after those experiences, around the time I was probably 17, 18 years old, I think.
Nice. And what age would you say that you knew that like this was the goal? Like I want to go pro. What age would you say that happened for you?
8 years old.
Wow, that's pretty early, because like
Yeah.
me personally, I was like, I want to take this serious at 18. Like I just had fun all the way until up then. How'd you know at 8 years old this was the goal? This is what I want to do.
Everything I saw on TV. I think, this was, so I feel lucky because I was a part of I was part of the generation that's in the middle where technology was there, but it wasn't all the way there. So what we had an old cabinet at our house, and there were, I kid you not an exaggeration, there were at least 50 plus VHS tapes in that cabinet, all of games. So I'm talking games from '98 World Cup, 2000 Euros, 2002 World Cup, 2006 World Cup. I mean, all of those tournaments before, we got a DVD and, had CDs, and that's even ancient for people today, right? So all those games I was able to watch live. I remember.
So when did you sign your first professional contract?
So my first professional contract was signed in Spain in, I believe it was 2019. Yeah, 2019. And so what happened was, after I finished college, I knew I wasn't going to be able to play in the US. It's so difficult. You need, obviously, a good connection. You need an agent or something along those lines. But also, this is 3-4 years ago, where the pathways weren't as open as they are now, especially through MLS academies and teams, which I wasn't a part of growing up. That was something that was created basically as I was leaving high school and about to go to college. So I didn't have any connections there, pretty much. So I knew, obviously, I wasn't going to get drafted or be in the MLS draft, which is a very exclusive list. About 50 college guys in the country get to go there. So I had a connection to Spain with an old coach of mine who was working there, and he basically said, "Hey, if you come to Spain and do some work with the company I've got here, then we can try to set you up some trials." And so that's kind of how I arrived over there and went through 3-4 months of trials, and then was able to sign a contract after that period.
Nice. So did he have an academy down there, or what was going on? What was his program?
So over there, it's basically, they set up going abroad is a big thing now for youth soccer, in terms of getting clubs and teams, kids over to Europe. And so he has a company that takes any kind of American team, club, high school club, colleges over for tour experiences. So all over Spain, into France, and so that's the way that company operates. And so I was able to go work, and then he set up some local connections, whether playing or business, and then that kind of expanded the range that the company had, and that's how I was able to kind of get into the professional game there.
Nice. So that means you guys had a really tight relationship then, for him to want to open up the door and say, "Hey, come do some work, and we'll open up some opportunities for you as well." So he obviously liked you off the field as a person, and trusted you who you are, and then obviously you were good enough for him to say, "Hey, we want to give you opportunities to other clubs." Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was the biggest piece, because it wasn't a soccer related piece. Like, I had to go there first as someone who's going to work. The soccer piece wasn't guaranteed. There were doors that could potentially be opened, but I had to first prove I could do the work and be reliable to help run the academy setup that they had. So any kids that were coming from the U.S. that would come for a short stay or an extended stay, I had to help. And there were also kids, foreign kids, that I would help take care of as well, day to day, whether it was training them, getting them to school, taking care of school things, anything you can think of logistically, taking them around the city. I'd known the city pretty well because I'd been there 3-4 times before. So all of that I was doing, and trying to get in good favor with people so that they give you an opportunity. So
100%. I don't think a lot of players really understand that aspect of, you know, things opening up from, off the field. I don't think a lot of players have experienced that or fully understand that. And it's a very unique situation. I have a couple of questions probably offline I'll ask you about that scenario, which is
yeah,
good money making, business. But
yeah.
in regards of you signing your first professional contract in Spain, can you just talk a little bit about how the opportunity came about, um, and what was the level like over there in Spain?
Yeah, so the opportunity came about through basically um, a local connection that my old coach had, who now had become my boss. Right, he made a local connection. There's a huge international tournament held every summer called the Donosti Cup in Spain, in San Sebastian, and so it brings teams from all over the world now. he had come to know people who organize that tournament in the city, and bringing teams every summer meant that he was someone who they did a lot of work with, a lot of business with. So naturally, he started to develop relationships with local people and local clubs. And so, conversations lead to conversations about, okay, well, what else can we do together? And that's the point where a couple of players who were interested in the pro game started to come over. I wasn't the first one. There were a couple others who had tried and come over for trials. And so that was kind of the beginning of them opening up a pathway for players who potentially wanted to come and try the professional game. The only trouble was, well, can they stay in the country, right? Is there a situation for them to get paperwork to stay beyond just a tourist visa of 90 days, right? And so that's kind of the battle that's ongoing, that everybody, again, that's another layer of the professional game, for example, abroad, that maybe people don't know about. It's, I'm just going to go to some country and play. Well, you need paperwork, right? And who's going to, help you with that paperwork, right? There's a lot of ways to go about it, but my way was through working with the company. And so that was how I got connected through his connections to a local club.
Got it. And so that means you got a work visa, and he was your sponsor in order for you to get that work visa under his company.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. And that's the other thing too. Like, again, you mentioned a great point where players don't know about the paperwork or the visas, and that takes time. That costs money. You need a sponsor. You need to be making money from a company. A company has to be paying you. Those are sort of four big pieces that not everyone can get, right? Very unique situation here, and it's awesome to have you on with us. So are you able to mention the club that you played for, that you first played?
Yes. Yeah. The club I played for was Real Union, Club de Irún. So right in the last town before the border, and you step into France. So right there on the Spain-France border in the north.
Yeah. And honestly, bro, like, I've faced visa issues too, not even knowing it. So there's millions of players facing this problem. Like, I faced it in England and France, like not knowing. You hold a U.S. passport, I'm assuming?
Yeah, U.S. passport.
Is that the only passport that you're holding?
Yeah, that's the only one.
Yeah. And there's a lot of players facing visa problems that don't even know, that come across it, and they're like, wow. But I think that's more so to have to do with like players being outside of the system and not having the support from like these top clubs per se, or clubs that really want them. But
yeah.
So how'd you go from Spain and then coming back to the US, to your home country, and playing in the USL?
Yeah. So when I came back home, again, you haven't proven yourself completely, right? I think if I was playing at an even higher level in Spain, then I think maybe some more people would know who I was, or if I had an agent or a connection there, because to this day, I've never signed with an agent. Actually, some people think, oh, well, you have an agent, so it's easy. It's like, I've never had an agent. I've talked to agents, but never worked with agents before, signed a contract with an agent. So when I got home, I'm kind of scrambling because I'm essentially in the US a nobody in terms of my resume at higher levels. So I did, the generic thing that a lot of people do that are trying to figure out, which is I went to a pro tryout. So I had a good friend of mine who was living in Richmond, Virginia. I grew up with him, and he ended up going to play at VCU, and then he stayed in Richmond to coach and work locally. And as I came back, I was telling him, man, I'm looking for something. I don't know. I'm just brainstorming here, and we were thinking out loud. And then he just said, why don't you come to Richmond? So I said, all right, let me try it. It was near the end of the summer, and I'd been looking for so many things, and nothing stuck. So I said, okay, let me go for the weekend. And they had a pro open tryout. So about 40 something guys showed up. The setup was, play the first 2 days, and then the guys who we evaluate and think are among the 18 best players will play the pro team on Sunday in the stadium. So went through day one, played well, went through day two, played well. They call me in to play on Sunday against the Kickers. And again, played well in that game. And so for me, I walked away like, they're going to call me, they're going to email me something, right? I was like, it's going to happen. And I was really badly disappointed. And I remember, getting the refresh on the email for a week, over a week, nothing happened. And so I was like, all right, well, I got to reset and see what I can find. So the story gets crazy because, to come full circle, I'll sum it up as quickly as I can. A couple months later, it's about November. I had found some connections and said, okay, I'm going to go play in this showcase in Thailand, actually. And so I'm in Thailand, and I'm trying to make a way there, right? Again, playing in the showcase environment, teams there from all over Thailand and different Asian countries, trying to figure out something there. And I play in the showcase. I'm waiting to hear results of, okay, an agent's interested or a coach or whoever's interested. Waiting. And in the middle of me waiting, I'm sitting there. I wake up one morning, and obviously big time difference between, East Coast time and Bangkok. And I have an email from the kicker's assistant coach, actually. And the email simply said, thought you did well at the tryout. And I'm kind of in my mind like, well, the tryout was in August and now it's December. It's the beginning of December. So I'm kind of like, oh, man, this is interesting timing. He said, come to the next tryout. I saw that they got a new coach, and their new head coach was someone that I played for in Seattle when I was young, actually. Small world, just how it works. Sometimes you get lucky. So I shot him a text and just said, hey, I went to the August tryout. I did well. The assistant obviously is going to be on your staff, the same assistant that had seen me in August. I said, if you can, just possibly have a chat with him and talk it over. But I said confidently, yeah, I think that I should be in the preseason with you guys this winter, instead of coming to another open trial. So he said, okay, well, let me get back to you. And 2 days later, he texts me and says, all right, you're in for the preseason. And so that's how I went into preseason 2020, right before COVID. And so went into preseason really confident, really sharp. And first game we played, I think, North Carolina, when they were still in the championship. I did really well in that game. The next game we played Loudon, again, who were in the championship, did really well, even playing in a different position that game. And right after that game is when they said, oh, we want to sign you, after the second preseason game. So that's how my journey in Richmond started, and I was there for 2 years.
Yeah, that's amazing. Again, small world. There's a whole bunch of different points I want to touch on. Quickly going back to you not having an agent. So you're playing on the field and then you're also managing your career. How have you been able to do that?
Like managing my career in the sense of like finding
finding connections is, especially with your communication skills, I could understand from that point. But negotiating your contract, signing the deal, did you get a lawyer to look over your contract, those type of things?
Yeah. So one of the things that I've done pretty frequently is there are some really good connections, good family friends in Seattle that I have and that I have through my brother. And so people have been able to look over contracts that I've been offered and basically give me guidance, say, hey, this needs to be fixed or that needs to be changed. And people with soccer experience, which is great. That you have people with soccer experience and legal experience looking over some things. So I owe them a lot for doing that. Aside from that, it's pretty much you trying to put yourself out there. It's pretty much you looking every which direction for some kind of opportunity. That I've sent thousands and thousands of emails out. Putting my resume out there, putting my highlight videos out there, and you're hoping that something sticks. And so that's been the process, and it's not easy because I think people are much more receptive when it's a agent who comes forward and says, oh, this is the player I'm representing. I think it's really hard for players to speak for themselves sometimes, because again, sometimes coaches don't, or front office people don't. They don't open the email. They don't respond to it, or nobody takes the call, or nobody wants to take the call. So it's really, really hard. It's not a. So again, in certain ways, I put the work in, but then I also got good fortune. I think that's part of it that people need to understand, is that you also need to get fortunate at the right time. Even being selected into the team, it's not even just, oh, can you get a trial? It's like, okay, well, being offered a contract means there's a spot in your position. right? So maybe a guy is hurt or injured, or a guy had a contract issue, or his contract finished, so he left. A coach is looking for a player with your qualities based on their style of play. So there's so many different things aside from do you have an agent? Like there has to be 5, 6, 7 different things that need to go your way in order to break it. And that's I think what people don't understand. They think, okay, if I'm talented, I'll make it, and that's not how it goes. Because I've seen incredibly talented players who, like I said, the factors didn't line up for them, and not enough factors lined up for them that would make um, the decisive action that, oh, now they're being offered a contract or signing a contract. So for me, in my situation, I think it was a lot of persistence. It was good fortune in certain moments, but then I think also that good fortune comes from like I said, the persistence, the consistency in your training, the discipline in your your daily habits. Because it's so easy to get sidetracked, especially when you don't have an opportunity right away. It's so easy to just say, screw it, or I'm not going to go to another tryout, or I'm not going to send another email. It can be really tough. It can be a grind when you're not getting the results you want. So I think being able to push through those moments is also key to finding some kind of success.
Yeah, great points. I think the stars really aligned in your favor. Talk about stars aligning. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that is very inspiring to me, your story, and that's why I love doing these interviews with players, and again sharing it back with the next generation of players growing up right now, because they don't know what they don't know yet, and for them to come across
Yeah.
these interviews, people like you who hear your story is amazing. So um, that's why we do it. And I want to ask you, what advice would you give to players growing up right now that want to go pro? What advice would you give to them?
It's always such a loaded question because there's so many different things. I think the first thing I would say is to enjoy the game. It's really hard for you to move forward with this life if you don't enjoy the game, and I'll tell you why. One of the things that people need to know is that the life is much harder than people think it is in general. The easiest example I can give is that a lot of people see the Cristiano Ronaldos and the Messis, and for example, just the money they make, the lifestyles they have, and say, okay, well, if I'm a professional, that's what it's going to be like. Big reality check, because most professional players around the world only make, I think the stat was like 50, 60 to 70% make like under 2, 3 thousand a month, right? And if you're living pretty much almost anywhere in the U.S., that's not a livable salary. It's not a livable wage, right? And so you have to think to yourself, okay, well, what does life look like for me? If I try to go along this path, it's not a situation where you can afford to, if not be able to manage money, for example, because you need to be able to fly different places, tryouts, combines, whatever. Those things cost $200-300, right? Your flights to go places. But one of the things I would say is it becomes a job, and it becomes a grind of a job. And so if you don't love it that much, you can't do it. You can't do it because, there's so many guys, especially even in the, just the US, and not even just the rest of the world. The standards of living are higher here than in other places in the world, but you need to understand that you're probably not going to be making a lot of money from soccer itself. It's almost a situation that I think is similar to this idea of, college scholarships, and kids talking about, oh, I want to get college scholarships. And how is it similar? Well, it's similar because there's so limited spots, and there's also limited amounts of money. And it's very rare for you to find a soccer player that had a full ride scholarship to play college, right? So you're going to need to find other ways to supplement that. So academic scholarship money, for example, or grants that you're going to need to apply for, whatever that looks like. And it's the same at the professional level in the sense that you're going to need to find other work. A lot of guys do coaching. A lot of guys do other things that maybe if they went to college, that they are using their degree for. Or anything. I've had teammates that Ubered to make extra money. Guys that did DoorDash to make extra money. There was a teammate of mine who would. I didn't know that this is a thing, but getting paid to write subtitles on videos. I was with a guy in Richmond who was doing that. Yeah, there you go. And so any kind of odd job or thing that you can do. I mean, that's what led me to create my own training program, right? To say, okay, well, I need to, make more of a living for myself. So I might need to have a program where I can train kids in person and virtually, um, to supplement that whatever you make in the pro game, because it's even for guys in the MLS, it's a lot more than in second and third division, but it's still not as much as people would think that, you can honestly go find a job in a week that pays more than being a professional soccer player does. And that's the truth.
Yeah, and not a lot. You mentioned already. Not a lot of players know. Again, great points. Um, you mentioned you created a program. Can you just let the viewers know what it's called and where they can find it? And we'll have it linked in the description down below, guys.
Yeah. Yeah. So in 2020, in the fall of 2020, I created Elevate Training Program. And I was really proud and excited to create that because the experiences that I had growing up, what made the game for me, and when I talk about enjoyment, the thing that made the game for me was relationships with teammates, relationships with coaches. There's people that I'm close to today that I played with when I was 8 years old. There's coaches I'm connected with today that I played for when I was 10 years old, right? And so for me, that's where my love of the game was really came from, was the relationship. My brother, my older brother, I mean, that's one of the most profound relationships that I have in life, obviously linked to the game because we grew up together, but because of us growing up together and playing together in the yard and watching games throughout the years, wherever in the world we've been able to connect. So for me, yeah, just the love of the game, So that's what I would say about that.
Yeah, so we'll definitely have it linked in the description. I had a couple more questions. Is it cool if I ask?
Yeah.
Okay. We didn't really get to talk a bit about on the field, but I'm interested to know what position you played. And yeah, we'll start off with that.
Yeah, so I play center, defensive mid, and center back. In Richmond, I played as a holding mid. There were games that I was, I played as an 8 or 10. There are also situations where I filled in as a center back in certain games. And so being versatile, I think, has been something important for my career. I think also in the way that I see the game, that's helped a lot. I think when I was young, like most kids, I wanted to score goals, play higher up the field. And then I think obviously throughout the years, we started to slowly move back and back and back because my reading of the game was something that was one of my strongest points. But then also, scoring goals is hard. Being an attacking player is hard. There's a lot of pressure with that. But I think that my ability to read the game and understand, what needs to happen with each action was something that helped me be versatile. So in Spain, I was able to play right wing. I was able to play attacking mid. I was able to play right back. And then the next year in Richmond, I was able to play, some 6, some 8, some center back. And so here in Bay Cities, I've mainly played as a center back, but I've also been able to play as a holding mid in some situations. So.
Nice. What are 3 things or one thing that you're kind of like in your primary? If you don't mind me asking, how old are you right now?
27.
So you're 27. Basically in your veteran years. What have you applied now to your game that you're like, wow, this has made a huge change in my game? That if I applied this a bit earlier, that it could have been very impactful.
I think, some of the lessons I learned from Spain were huge, but some of the lessons I learned from Spain, I should have learned when I was, 8 to 15 years old. I think there's certain things about the game that if you don't learn them in your more formative years, it's really hard to do them when you're older. So a clear example is this idea of pausing. I think oftentimes, especially in the U.S. and college doesn't help with this at all. And obviously certain places you go, not just college in this country don't help you with this, but this idea that the game is always fast, it's always vertical. at the higher levels, the better teams understand how to manipulate and control the rhythm of the ball and the rhythm, and as a result, the rhythm of the game. There's teams like, Liverpool. Liverpool's infamous for, oh, they're fast, they're vertical, they get in. Like, okay, great. But you also have a player like Thiago, who when he's on the ball, he also slows them down. And he has this tempo and this ability to, relieve pressure from the team through either dribbling or through passing. And then when the moment comes where they need to go forward, okay, bang, he can make that decisive pass or that forward pass. But you see it especially with a team like City, where that's who they are. You see with Real Madrid, players like Cruz and Modric and Casemiro, who they can't cover as much ground as they could 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. But the way that they manipulate the game is incredible. And that's how, for example, they win a Champions League final against Liverpool, who's more physically dominant, is that when they had their opportunities to slow the game down and basically pull Liverpool out of position, they were so brilliant at it. The ball retention, being able to pause and take a breath on the ball is massive. And so that was one of the things that growing up, we weren't really taught that. And so that's one of the biggest lessons that, when I got to Spain, I'm like, whoa, guys are so calm. These players are so relaxed, whether it's a tight situation or whether there's a lot of pressure, that they don't panic. They're very competent in their decision making despite less time and less space. And that's something that, here I was taught, or I wasn't taught those things, and instead you're taught, okay, well, if there's pressure, we need to go direct, every time. Or if, just in terms of style, some coaches just said, okay, we'll get the ball forward as fast as possible, and that's it. So,
yeah, the Canadian U.S. game compared to Europe is completely different. I mean, we could stay here and I could ask a million questions, but we'll lead to one last one and then we'll dive into the 10 questions. And then I wanted to ask you some questions offline.
Yeah.
So the last one, what's your most memorable soccer moment in your life?
Oh man. Yeah, I think this is the one I'm thinking of is the one. I'd have to say this year, playing in the Open Cup against the Earthquakes at Avaya Stadium, starting and playing 90. That was my first game for the club, actually. Starting and playing 90 in that game had to be a pure highlight because of a conversation I had with my dad, actually. I think it was a few days after the game, we had a conversation, and it was something that I had forgotten, but he said to me, he's like, son, I think that you fulfilled your dream. And I was kind of like, what are you talking about? It was something that was far off in the distance from me. And he said, well, you kept telling me about this dream you had since you were young. And he's like, in the dream, you were playing in front of thousands of people. And I was just like, yeah, you're right. Since a young age, I'd had these dreams of playing in front of, 1,000 people in a big stadium. I'd seen it. I'd been in those stadiums before. When I was young, I saw Real Madrid come to town. I'd seen Manchester United come to town, Chelsea, Barcelona, all these big teams come to Seattle. And so I was like, man, this would be amazing one day. And so in the Open Cup, it was about, there's 8,000 or so, and we're playing in this fantastic stadium. And, we're in the warm-ups, for some reason, I don't know, it didn't hit me. As soon as we were in the tunnel, we walk out, and I was like, whoa, like it felt like a dream. But as soon as the whistle blew, I was like, no, this is real. So I think that was, despite the result of the game, we obviously lost. That was a cool memory because I think it's a dream manifested, I think. And I played well in that game. So yeah.
Yeah, that's huge. I just had a moment there when you said you achieved your dream. That's amazing when your dad said that. So
yeah,
that's cool. Let's dive into the 10 fun questions. So they're speed questions. You got to answer them fast.
All
right, let's do it. Who's your favorite team?
City, Manchester City.
Favorite player?
Kevin De Bruyne.
Favorite cleats?
Adidas Predators.
Favorite food?
Mexican food.
Favorite artist musically?
Drake.
Oh, Canadian. Messi or
Yeah.
Ronaldo?
Messi.
Uh, do you play FIFA or have you?
Yeah.
If we were to play a game, we had $1,000 on the line. Who's your go-to team to play?
Could I? Okay, let me finish this the way I need to. Barcelona from 2009.
Okay. 2 goals in the
2009, 2010.
2 goals in the game, or 1 goal and 1 assist?
1 goal, 1 assist.
Would you rather score a free kick or a PK last-minute goal to win your team the game?
Free kick.
And then the last one, if you were a coach and you were able to sub in any player in history, who would that be?
Messi.
Mumbi, before we go, I just want to thank you for taking the time for joining us on the One Soccer Nation podcast today.
Thank you for having me.